r/the10thDentist. Comfortably No 1457 says. The British Museum should not return the artifacts. Sorry for bad English. Firstly, I'm half Tanzanian with is a former British colony. The British Museum has artifacts from all over the world. It's a good thing to have a place where you can see artifacts from different cultures. And if they gave the artifacts back, then nobody would see them. Nobody is traveling around to 25% of the earth just to look at artifacts. Not a single person would see all of the different artifacts from different country. If countries want people to know of their culture and history, then the best thing to do is let England keep it. Bitter_initiative_77 says. This post demonstrates a misconception about repatriation. I say this as an anthropologist who used to work in repatriation at one of the world's largest cultural museums. Museums have a complex array of items. Some have very dubious histories, for instance. Stolen during war, dug up from graves, bought from shady people. Some have very clear histories, for instance. Purchased from a local, commissioned by the museum from an artisan, a replica made by museum staff. Some have very murky histories, that is. We have no clue where they came from. In practice, only the things from the first category get returned, and those things represent only a portion of the overall collection of museum. So if we gave back all the stuff that needs to be given back, museums would still have a lot. It's also important to keep in mind that what you see in a museum is not what the museum has. What's on display is often, at most, 5-10% of the entire collection. The rest of the collection sits in storage for decades and will only be viewed if it's needed for a search or a special exhibition. Museums are holding on to a lot of stuff that they just never use, so it may as well go back if it has a dubious history. We should also consider that there's not much practical value in having the original at a museum. If an object is truly important, but it was stolen and should be returned, the museum can have 100% accurate replicas made for display and no one will be able to tell the difference. TBH, a lot of the stuff you see in cultural museums is a replica and you just don't know it. Edit. Also, some of these items that are up for repatriation because they have significance. For instance, if an item has spiritual meaning, we need to send it back. The museum I worked at had a lot of Native American bowls. They were very pretty, and it's easy to go, well, it's just a bowl. However, 95% of those bowls were grave goods. For the groups who the bowls originated from, their belief system included a belief that grave goods, A, have spiritual energy, and B, need to be left with the dead as a result. From their perspective, it was a major disturbance to their ancestors for the bowls to be in the museum, and we can't dismiss that. Another example is that my museum had a number of religious altars that, according to cultural norms, should A, only be seen/touched by men, and B, be secret to non-members of the religion. Showing those items off in a museum so people can learn about culture when members of the culture being learned about explicitly want it to remain secret is fricked up. Edit. See my comment a bit below concerning some of the issues impacting repatriation. Related, there are alternatives to repatriation when repatriation is not possible. For instance, in collaboration with a cultural group, museums can work to store/display things in a culturally sensitive manner. For instance, my museum had a large collection of grave goods from a particular community that could not be repatriated due to a variety of issues. We consulted with that group and they were able to come to the museum, smudge the space, pray, and inform us how we should most respectfully handle the grave goods. Only men could touch them. We had to keep them covered with linen cloths at all time, put up a sign limiting access to that aisle of storage, etc. There was another instance in which a group didn't want everything back because they didn't have their own museum, but felt strongly about co-curacy on We worked with them to design an exhibit that met their needs and the museum's needs, and it was easily the coolest exhibit in the entire museum. Museums have done a lot of wrong in the world, and it just takes a little effort to slowly begin making things right. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. Guiferous Big Toe says, "This is a nuanced and thoughtful take, clearly rooted in the current literature around these issues too." r/the10thDentist. Anywhereroa says, "I hate the rumble feature on gaming controllers and I never use it. Honestly, I don't understand how people can enjoy their hands buzzing every time they do something while playing a game. Killed an enemy? Here's some vibration sent to your hands. Scrolling through the menu? Here's more. I'm assuming most gamers like the rumble feature because whoever I talked to said that they like it. Some of my friends even think of it as a must for controllers." Edit. After all the comments, I guess I stand corrected, lol. Apparently a lot of people think the same as me. Still, good to find out. Son of Mighty Joe says, "I like it for some games. Driving games I almost always keep it on because it's emulated pretty well with the rumble. I enjoy the rumble on NBA 2K and Madden as well, because the rumble sort of helps my brain associate the current game mechanic that's being used. Turn it off on just about everything else though." Jzilican says, "In games that do it well, it can be a genuine boon to gameplay. I think Monster Hunter, particularly the 5th gen games World and Rise, are a great example of this. Many weapons and monsters have lots of visual effects that appear throughout the fight, and especially as you progress further in the game or play in multiplayer, the screen can get quite chaotic. Part of the way the game compensates for this is with controller vibration, giving a small nudge when your attacks are charged or your guard is hit to help you keep your combos on time and keep track of your targets just that much better." Norden says, "I agree, but I hate vibration in general, like on a phone and whatnot." Bean Penis says, "First thing I do on any new console is go to settings, turn off rumble, controller speakers, system sounds, and dim the controller lights as low as it'll allow me. I then turn vibration on in every game the first time I start it just to make sure. I don't find it immersive, I find it annoying." r/the10thDentist. Thebending off Balzac says, "I hate all speed superheroes. In any media, whenever a speedster comes into the story, it almost always gets ruined. If you don't know, a molecule of plastic, if shot fast enough, not even close to speed of light, can utterly obliterate and explode a solid block of the hardest metals. That's how op speed is. So whenever I see a character that can run faster than sound, let alone light, be dicking around when the big villain shows up instead of running into him, I count it as a plot hole. The only two examples off the top of my head that's actually good when it comes to this is Red Rush from Invincible TV show. He is not some demigod who can run faster than everything and would splat if he tried that with Omni-Man and is mostly support. Or a Train from The Boys. He actually runs people over. Like he should. Too long. Didn't read. Speed is op as shit. And if a fictional character is faster than light, he should break reality IDC about no speed force BS justification." Genetic17 says, "Right, but counter argument, speed force. In all seriousness, I totally see where you're coming from. I was endlessly frustrated at the Flash TV show on the CW for how inconsistent they made Barry for no other reason than writing a speedster is. Frick, I'm hard. How do you meaningfully pose a challenge to someone who should be able to do multiple laps around the globe in the time it would take them to move a fraction of a centimeter? It just doesn't make sense. With all of that said, I think that, if handled well, that can of worms once opened is actually an ocean of creative possibility. There's nothing inherently wrong with super speed if the challenges put in front of the hero are meaningfully challenging to said hero, and they are allowed to accelerate the thing they are supposed to dominate. Aka don't needlessly make them weak in speed related problems. They should never be shot by a gun in a fight, for example. Especially with your Ed Rush and A-Train caveats, it sounds less like a problem with speedsters inherently and more just a problem with poor writing. Which, amen brother. From Across the Stairs says, a character can run faster than the speed of light, that would warp time, and depending how fast they go, can potentially even reverse it. That would not work in any way. Marvel Kid says, Speed Force counters all this. Cheese Kid 26 says, speed superheroes usually aren't invulnerable. Running into the bad guy would kill them too. Think about it for a second. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Probagina 96 says, read Worm, you would love how they use speedsters and time stoppers. Lampiwastaken says, counter argument, stop being a nerd. Squeakitisquonk says, Sanic. Nala Spectre says, lol taking down Barry Allen. Shadow_Saitama says, it's always hilariously pathetic when people complain about lack of realism and logic in very fictional stories. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.